Greetings and welcome to another edition of the Pedalshift Project. The Pedalshift Project is a series of conversations, thoughts, and experiments on bicycle travel adventures. From tips and tricks to ideas on how to ride your ride, let's shrink the world by bike. Show notes and more are available at pedalshift.net, and you can email the show at pedalshift@pedalshift.net or text me at 202-930-1109 and check Pedalshift out on all the socials as well. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 424th edition of the Pedalshift Project. My name's Tim Mooney. Thanks so much for joining. On this edition, big news for the show. The Pedalshift Project is setting up camp in a brand new city. This episode breaks down what that means for future tours, how this opens up brand new riding possibilities, and why the destination may be a bit of a surprise, but also maybe not a surprise at all. I'm not going to bury the lead too much here. I am going to be establishing a new home in Seattle. Why? This move is all about geography. It's about access. It's about expanding the Pedalshift touring and adventuring sandbox. The city of Seattle is just basically world-class bike adventuring. There is amazing terrain right outside the city limits, inside the city limits, quite frankly, and it increases the show's ability to cover way more routes and do it way more often. And most importantly, this is, yes, a return to the broader Pacific Northwest. This is something you should think of as a new Basecamp and not at all any commentary on my beloved Portland, Oregon. If you don't know, Portland and Seattle have a little bit of a weird rivalry, and Seattle is the big brother or the big sibling to the younger sibling of Portland, and it's something that's always there. And one of the things that I wanted to make sure is that the land of sunshine and bunnies is always going to be the land of sunshine and bunnies to me. I adore Portland. I have family in Portland. I have family in Seattle. But let's just put it this way, and I said this in a post that I put up on LinkedIn recently. If you Portland people don't think I know how to go south on I-5 and cross the Columbia River, you've got another thing coming. So I will absolutely be darkening the door of Portland a lot. The choice of Seattle was somewhat complex for me, but ultimately it was the right decision for me, and I'm super excited for it. But again, not a commentary on beautiful Portland, Oregon. There are obviously other details to all of this, but they're super weedsy, and I'm not going to go into the details of that for you. So I want to focus in on the impacts of a move to Seattle on this here show, this particular program, this podcast. And the short version is this really unlocks bike adventures in a massive way that I just can't really do the same here in the DC area. And I'm just going to rattle off a whole bunch of things that are at top of mind right now. The first thing is there's so much to explore within the city of Seattle, just using wherever my apartment/home is as a home base for day trips and loops and things like that. The city is absolutely amazing for all of that. It's super hilly, which is something that a lot of people don't really realize, but it's interconnected with transit and most importantly, my beloved ferries. You heard all year long me talking about ferries. And then when I made the decision to move to Seattle, I was like, oh my God, there's so many ferries and water taxis. I can't wait. So just the city of Seattle alone gives opportunities for day trips and adventures and things along those lines as part of an exploration process. And one of the things that I could see myself doing is that urban exploration by bike, which I think is really awesome. And even next week, as you listen to this show, we're going to be including a little bit of a Honolulu adventure. And those are the kinds of things that I think are really possible. And there's so much opportunity with Seattle for that. So if I can actually get out of the city limits, which will certainly happen, you've got the surrounding Puget Sound area, just regionally. You've got a whole variety of islands that can create some really amazing ferry-based and water taxi-based overnights. There's Bainbridge Island, Vashon Island, Whidbey Island, the San Juans in particular. Those are just the ones that are within Washington State. I'll get to the other ones later. But ferry-based overnights and S240s, those are absolutely on the table. And again, some of them could involve camping, some of them could involve roof lodging, some of them could just be day trips. There's just a ton of possibilities there and a ton of different quirks to why I would be doing any of these things. So I'm super excited about that. I think the Brompton in particular is a really interesting tool for this, but so is the e-bike. And a lot of it depends on what's the nature of the ride. Am I going to be going into hilly areas? Boom, e-bike. Am I going to be in a place where having the portability of the Brompton is going to be a major factor? Boom. So lots of things in the ferry water taxi situation. Going a little bit further out, you got the Olympic Peninsula. And of course, there's Adventure Cycling Association Pacific Coast route connections there. I've already done transit to the Pacific route from Seattle before. So that's really exciting. I know it's in the realm of possible, but there are a whole variety of other things in portions of that route that I've never done. Now they've altered the route a bit, but you've got Port Townsend, of course, you've got Swim, and you've got Forks. Those are places where you can really start to get some interesting things. I am really looking forward to some big ticket coastal scenery for the trip updates, and again, for short day trips, but more likely these types of things would be a long weekend. But think the type of adventure that I would have with the C&O, but it's on the Olympic Peninsula, and that is just stunning. I'm really excited about that. A little bit of backstory. When I moved to Portland in the 90s, I, like so many people, went through the winter problem before I got my brain dialed in on what winters are like in the Pacific Northwest. And it's not so much the rain, it's the lack of light. Overcast days every day. You'll get peaks of sunshine for sure. But boy, when that sun sets in the 4 o'clock hour, and in Seattle, it's even worse, it does get to you after a little bit. And the first recommendation was get out to the mountains and get above the clouds. And I looked at the Olympic Peninsula and went to Hurricane Ridge Olympic National Park and did some snowshoeing. And holy smokes, that just made me fall in love with the Olympic Peninsula. And obviously Hurricane Ridge, not so great for biking, but great for other adventures. And we'll get to that in a little bit. But Olympic Peninsula is so on my list, one of my favorite places on the planet. Let's go. Instead of going west, let's go east. Let's go to the Cascades. And there's just amazing opportunities there as well. The Palusta Cascades Trail is absolutely something that I've been considering. I haven't done any cross-state adventures this year, but this trail beckons if I want to do a real gravel forward type of epic Washington State cross-state ride. That's been on my list. I might have to get a new bike, or I might have to convert the e-bike or do something. I don't know, but that's on the list. Of course, that goes through the Cascades as well. You've got the whole Snoqualmie Pass corridor as well, and there's some interesting opportunities there that get more into the kind of gravel, maybe even mountain bikey kind of place, and that's something to consider too. The North Cascades Highway, which I believe is Highway 20, that is part of a variety of different routes. In fact, I think that was part of my Game of Chance situation for a little bit in there. That goes to the North Cascades National Park. It is very closed right now. As I sit here, I believe there's going to be a massive storm that's going to be just dumping snow up in that area. That closes that highway for months and months of the year. So that's not something to be looking at until possibly the summer, but put that on the list as well. And of course, I'm just talking Washington State. You go further south into Oregon, there's a lot of things as well. So I'm super stoked for the Cascades being a possibility. And there's a bunch of different ACA routes and others all throughout there. Let's broaden things out even more. Let's get international here. British Columbia has now entered the chat. I'm super excited for the easy access to Vancouver and Victoria, and also to Vancouver Island as a possibility, which is where Victoria is, confusingly enough, of course. There's amazing cycling there, and that is literally a ferry ride away. And yes, I can bring my bike. And again, the ease to combine transit, water-based and non-water-based, to be able to go to all of these places with bike just absolutely opens things up a lot. It is going to be a lot easier for me to cross the border into Canada with my Washington status firmly in place. The driver's license in Washington state are enhanced IDs, which basically allows me to cross without having to carry my passport anymore, which is actually going to be super fun. So much more likely to end up doing some Canadian adventures, I think, not only in that area, but of course, if I do come back east, I can reconsider that Lake Ontario circumnavigation later on. And that's something that I also want to mention here, that just because I'm going to be located on the West Coast doesn't mean I can't get on a plane and fly elsewhere. And even though the doors are open to so many things that it's going to be tempting not to leave the region, know that there's still going to be the possibilities of leaving there. Speaking of, let's broaden things out one more time, and let's talk about the broader Western United States as well. So much easier to get to Northern California, Southern California, Alaska, Rocky Mountains, Colorado, places like that. I've been stalled on my piece by piece, one piece at a time cross-country trip. Now I can start considering doing the western section of it and meeting where the eastern portion has left off. I think somewhere in Kansas City is my recollection as to where my westernmost ride has gone, and fully connected over the variety of years that I've done these things. So I can maybe go to Kansas City the other direction, which is actually better for the wind and things along those lines. But I'm super excited about the possibility of extending my Western states adventures by bike too as well. So needless to say, there's a ton of opportunities here in all of these regional rides and all of the possibilities. They range from day trips that are urban exploration in Seattle all the way up to multi-day and perhaps even multi-week adventures as well. So how does the show evolve as a result of all of this? It probably doesn't change too terribly much, because I think some of this evolution has already started to occur. The first thing I'll say, though, is that the emphasis on micro touring, I think, is going to continue. Being in Seattle puts quality riding seconds, minutes away rather than hours away. I don't have to hop on a plane to come to the Pacific Northwest anymore, which has been a yearly thing for me for a really long time. So that allows me to do some shorter trips in the region, more experimental stuff. The ability to have a tour that lasts maybe an episode or two rather than taking an entire summer for you, the gentle listener. So I think that's something that should be pretty awesome as well. The other thing that I think I mentioned this, did I mention this in a live show or maybe somewhere else? I am looking to expand the footprint of this show beyond just bicycles, because I think that expanding these adventures to explorations by foot, so hiking, urban adventures, and more, is definitely a piece of what has interested me lately. And that doesn't mean that bicycles are going to be replaced. I think it just means that it opens the door to some more things that were maybe bicycle adjacent, but might also leave the bicycle at home, but does things in a way where the bicycle isn't necessarily the ideal way of getting across. But this will still be a bicycle forward pod, but I am going to be opening the door to some non-bicycle adventures. And in a sense, I've already done that as well. And I think I want to give myself a little more permission for that, and hopefully that works for all of you. I think about my trip to Dublin this past year, where I really didn't get on a bike at all. I should rephrase that. I did not get on a bike at all. Yet there were tons of adventures, and I regret that I didn't podcast some of those. And I think you would have really been into them possibly. So this is something to consider, and we'll try it out and see how that all goes. But look for that as a possibility in the future. And if you've got thoughts on that, please feel free to email pedalshift@pedalshift.net for thoughts on that. So some possibilities that I'm thinking about is some arcs, some tours, some adventures. The Islands project, where I am doing island by island cycling, hiking adventures throughout the Seattle region. I already rattled off a whole bunch of them, but that's certainly something that's on the list. Puget Sound loops, where I combine a little bit of transit and a little bit of cycling to get to those kind of outer places, do a portion of the Pacific Coast route, get out to Kitsap County and some of those places there. There's camping, there's amazing stuff. Go bike to Kurt Cobain's former hometown, perhaps, and come back. That's certainly an adventure that could be on the list there. I'm also looking at the possibility of that Palusta Cascades route, maybe not necessarily doing that all in one shot and doing that piece by piece. That certainly could be a way for me to add on to that piece by piece broader cross country trip that I've been doing over the years. So that's something to consider too. And of course, look, if you think I'm not going to be riding the Pacific Coast at all, you've got another thing coming. I think I've said that twice now. I am definitely going to be returning to the coast. Now, there's some interesting ways to do it, of course. I could just do what I've done all along and just get to Portland and then get to the coast. But I've also now got the opportunity, of course, to ride from Seattle and maybe mix a little bit of transit or ferries as a part of all of that. But coastal riding, particularly in the summer, is certainly something that is on the table. One thing that I do want to mention is that because this is a move, and I'll get to this in a little bit, I am going to be back and forth a bit during the first quarter of the year. So it's entirely possible that my ability to do larger trips is really going to be hampered until later in the year. So I may be leaning in on a lot of these smaller adventures as I go along. So we'll see what that ends up doing. The other issue is having to do with weather, of course. Now, Pacific Northwest winters are milder for sure, which allows me to go maybe deeper into the shoulder seasons than I was able to here in the Atlantic region of the northeastern United States. But of course, as I discovered many years ago, riding in the Pacific Northwest, anytime between, say, I don't know, maybe mid-October and mid-May, it can get pretty wet, and that's not super fun. So I may be exiting the Northwest for adventures elsewhere, but I do have the possibility of year-round riding. During those wetter months, it's super easy to get down to Northern California. To a certain extent, there's opportunities there, but there's still some of that same type of weather. But getting to Southern California is obviously an opportunity there. So am I going to be able to do a winter ride this year? It is unclear at this point to me. I do believe that I would like to get down to, say, San Diego or something like that, replace the Florida ride in 2026 with that. But I can't promise anything. I've got just a lot of things going on as a part of this transition. But know that year-round riding is absolutely something that's going to be happening. What stays the same about the show? Me, hi, it's me. I'm the problem. There's your Taylor Swift reference for those of you who are not in the know. I don't really listen to much of her music, but I do know that song because I am frequently the problem. It's me, which is a song of hers. Okay, I'm going to stop talking about that. So I think that the philosophy of this show is always going to be the same. It's intentional. It's practical. It leans into the joy of bicycle adventures and bicycle travel, the same thing that it always has been. It's my personality. It's still going to be here. I think that long form tours are going to be a part of the show because I want to do them. I don't know what they're going to look like in 2026. Normally, as I sit here in early December of any given year, I've already not only got a full plan for a winter trip, but I also have the beginnings of a plan for a spring trip. I have neither at this point. I have no specific plans for 2026 rides, and I don't know how that's going to shake out, but the long form tours, the multi-state adventures, the Canadian adventures, that's going to be a part of the show. I just don't know what it's going to look like at this point. Portland is this land of sunshine and bunnies. I've said that for years. I've said that on this show. I've said this on other podcasts. Portland's got that tagline. Seattle needs a tagline. I am open for any suggestions, but that is going to happen at some point. So there will be a tagline, a similar type of tagline that does not borrow from, but enhances from. Portland is the land of sunshine and bunnies. Seattle, we don't know yet. We'll find out. So what's happening now? As I sit here, actually, as you listen to this, I am literally beginning my move into my temporary apartment in Seattle. And for the next 3 months, I'm going to be doing a lot of Seattle reconnaissance. I'm going to be doing hopefully some riding. There are days when things open up weather-wise where it's a doable situation. It's not too cold, and we do get rain-free days in Seattle. There are not many of them during this time of year, but I am hoping to be able to do some early riding, particularly in West Seattle. I am very intrigued with West Seattle as a potential landing spot. That's not where I will be in the early days, but that's a place where I think I'm intrigued with. So that's one place. I'm definitely going to be hitting the ferries and the water taxis just to see what those vibes are and see what's in the realm of possible. The Brompton is probably going to be coming out on the early side because that's an obvious bike to bring. But I am also thinking about bringing out one of the touring bikes as well. As I mentioned, the e-bike is a tricky thing. I can bring the e-bike out. I just can't bring the batteries out. So that's something that probably won't be happening until possibly later in the spring. Open question. So the bikes that I have available are going to be a question mark at this point, but I certainly will have bikes available. So obviously it's going to be happening with this recon. I'm going to be scouting trails, routes, and spots for easy overnights and short form adventures because I think that's what's going to be in my wheelhouse, especially early on. I'm also going to be checking out the local bike shop ecosystem. There is one very favorable Brompton bike shop that I'm certainly going to be going to. Wherever I end up landing, it's going to be an open question as to what's going to be my preferred bike shop. Seattle has so many more options than DC did, and certainly the area around the cabin where it was actually quite limited. So I am excited for that. I should mention that I'm going to be car free for probably the first 3 months and perhaps longer depending on how things shake out. That's certainly going to impact a bunch of things. And I'm going to be very reliant on transit and frankly on bikes when the weather is favorable. So that's something to mention as well. I will have a vehicle hopefully later on, but again, I'm always willing to change my mind with things. One of the things about these early days is I'm testing out what works for me in Seattle. And although I obviously have a familiarity there, I've got family there, I've been there quite a lot over the years, it is different to be a visitor versus a resident. And so this early Seattle reconnaissance is going to be so critically important for not just me and my living and how bikes interact with that, but of course also for the show and how that's going to look and feel. Some production notes here. I'm scheduling winter and spring TBD at this point with some back and forth travel, just logistics for transitioning between the East Coast and the West Coast. So I think that the scheduling for the podcast is, like I said, TBD. It's entirely possible that we may be taking another break like we did the spring break this year. There may be some interstitial breaks. I may consider going to every other week. I may be throwing in some more best ofs in there just to make this transition work a little bit better. But at the same time, if there is interest in episodes that document this transition itself, which may not be super bike forward, obviously I would be doing it with an eye towards cycling and things like that. Let me know, because that certainly would be easy from a scheduling perspective for me to give updates that way. So if that's of interest, we can do that. Otherwise, I could potentially do some off feed versions of that. So let me know what your thoughts are on that. Is this move in and of itself of interest to you? That I don't know, and I'd like to go with what listeners are interested in. My regular cadence is going to kick in hopefully once I make the full transition in the spring. But again, you never know. I may be able to keep up with the typical best of at the top of the month and then doing episodes every week from there. It's just an open question. And I will try to make this something that is published so that no more of these surprise live show thing. That's another possibility, is maybe that we do some of these updates more in the live show context, which could be really interesting. I will have to say my first apartment, this one that's going to be for the first 3 months, it seems to be very reflecty from a noise perspective. I don't think I'll be able to podcast within the space of that, but I might have some alternate spaces where I could do some podcasting that doesn't have those audio problems, but I'm not sure if it's going to be audibly a good idea. So I'll know more when I'm actually sitting in there and have the microphones there and everything like that. In any event, I don't like to talk too much about how podcasts get made. That's the sausage, and we don't show you how the sausage is made, but I just wanted to give a heads up on the production side of things. As I've actually asked for throughout all of this before we close out here, I do want your input, because although this show can very easily continue in the way that it always has been, it just has a different location set up. And I will be back and forth, as I mentioned. Do you have suggestions for Seattle, Puget Sound, the broader Pacific Northwest in terms of route suggestions, or interest in what you want to hear? Are you interested in hearing beyond bikes? I would love to hear a little bit about that, knowing full well that bikes will still be the main focus of the program. Are there any hidden gems that you would love to tell me about? Tell me, are there particular ferry rides you like? Winter riding hacks in the Pacific Northwest. I certainly did ride in Portland, but not nearly the same. I will not need to commute. I'll be able to work from home. I'm transporting my job with me, which is fantastic and super easy, and I'm grateful for that. But if you've got ideas on anything like that, please let me know. Hit me up. If there's enough feedback and it ends up becoming an episode, you will get a shout out if you choose. So there's my news. In under a half hour, I just revealed this massive life change, and I'm beyond excited about it. I've been sitting on this for more than a few weeks, months even, and thought that this would be the right time to share this news as I was just getting things together. I have a lot of things in a variety of stages of being packed here at my cabin, but I am not doing a full-fledged move yet, because there's no good reason to move a bunch of stuff and then move it again. So this is going to be more about easing into the whole situation. And yes, I'm going to be back and forth and all of that too. So logistics, they are on the plate. And again, I can talk about that a little bit, but know that that stuff might not be super exciting to, hey, it's the moving podcast. I don't think that would be super exciting. I hope there is excitement out there for what's in store. I tried to lay that out a little bit here about the focus being the same, but of course just shifted to a new locale and what that really opens up, not just from the podcast standpoint, but from the broader adventuring standpoint. So again, that's it. Very excited. Hope you are too. More to come. Thank you for joining. You can find Pedalshift at pedalshift.net for more great bicycle touring content. You can hear the Pedalshift Project through Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast app. Opening music courtesy of Jason Kent off his self-titled album. The track is called America. Check out his band Sunfield's latest release, Mono Mono, wherever cool music is available.